Hey guys, welcome back to yet another mother episode of I Am I. I am still Joshua Ansley, last time I checked. And today we're moving along in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, right? So we've cleared through the kleshas, done, easy, right? Piece of cake. The kleshas being the obstacles along this spiritual path. Now, remember, one thing to remember is that we are talking about in this particular modality, right? So take it or leave it, just understand that we're working within this particular system, the context in which we're working, right? This is also typically a monastic understanding for people that are really dedicating themselves to this entirely. We're applying it to the modern world, which I think can be done, but understand that this is typically pretty severe, you know? The other thing to understand is that, as far as the kleshas go, that everybody has them, according to this philosophy. Again, that's underneath that. According to this philosophy, I certainly see that, I believe it, I see it in my life, how practical. That's why I fucking teach this and study it, right? So when we've looked at ourselves and understand what happens when we see that we have these things in our lives, for me it was very difficult because it's very easy to get into shame about having these things, right? And when I recognized that I was sort of textbook, there was freedom in that I wasn't even special in how fucked up I was, which was daunting in that way too, because well, I want to be fucked up. No, I'm fucked up. I remember when I went to my therapist, or my therapist, that's the right word. I was not my training hooker, my therapist. Sometimes they get mixed up. Sometimes they're both one and the same. But when I go to my therapist, and my therapist said to me, you're not as fucked up as you think you are. And I was like, well, that's pretty fucked up, isn't it? Just desperate to be fucked up and twisted, like it's gonna make me some sort of, it's because we hold on to our pain, and we hold on to that, and we can actually use that and use it to be in a victim mode to say why our life is the way it is because of the pain or the suffering or the challenge or the way the world is and all this nonsense, which is the antithesis of spirituality, right? Spirituality is looking inward, understanding self, and understanding how we relate to the world, and that's what this modality does. So when we move into the next place, this is why I'm talking about this shame and stuff like that, because the next place we're actually moving into the 8 limbs of yoga, of Patanjali's 8 limbs, right? Ashtanga yoga, it's called. Now there's a difference, and just to be clear, there's a difference between this Ashtanga yoga and the Ashtanga that Pattabhi Jois started, right? That was very modern, that is a very physical practice, and that was him being smart and using this ancient idea to say, okay, this is the Ashtanga yoga, and be like, ooh, that's legit. I've heard of that. Well, I've heard fucking hundreds and thousands of years, right? So, not to diminish the physical practice, it's a fantastic Ashtanga yoga by Pattabhi Jois, but I'm just making a distinction, which is a huge part of life, to make distinctions, right? Making the distinction that this is Ashtanga yoga, that's where this was actually borrowed from, is Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, right? Now it's freaking windy as hell. I hope this is even gonna work. I might have to redo this because this is going to be really loud. There was no wind before, now there's just tons. So we'll see. I'll check it out and maybe I'll have to do it again. So as we get into the actual 8 limbs of yoga, right? Understanding that these kleshas are the things that are going to block us, and if we're aware of them, these are the things that actually keep us from our higher understanding, right? From this higher sense of being. And as we get into the 8 limbs, right, to move towards this space of kaivalya or samadhi, right, and simplifying, it gets pretty complex actually, but we're going to keep it really simple. So to move towards that space, these 8 limbs of yoga that moves us towards that space, right, the first 2 are the yamas and the niyamas, right? So it's the do's and don'ts, right? It's basically the ethics and morals of how we relate to ourselves and the world. Now, the reason why I talk about shame is because this can somewhat seem like a real behavioral modification, and it's talked about a lot of people as being a behavioral modification, and you can take it that way if you'd like. From a Vedantic perspective, it's understood that the behavioral modification can only do so much, that just from a Vedantic perspective, that the true change happens within. You could say that the behavioral change can change what's within too, and I believe that it's important to work both ways, but ultimately the mind needs to change, right? And so this is viewed as this behavioral modification, but the problem with that is that it becomes a bit of a should and should not, which I believe that shoulds can lead to shame. So from that perspective, I think it's a little bit dangerous, I have to do these things, right? And very basically, I think it's actually, these things are modes of being that emulate the way we would behave if we recognize that we were that divine core at our nature, the divine nature of our core, right? So if we really understood that, then we would practice these things. It's kind of the idea that I've heard the same thing about the 10 Commandments, that this idea that it's not 10 things that you have to do, but 10 things that you would do if you knew how whole, healed, and complete, and you knew the divine nature of your core, you would actually operate that way, right? Bring in the 10 Commandments because I feel like I'm getting a little Moses again. I'm getting the Moses happening back. So, let my people go. I love saying that. Just let my people go. So where am I? Yoga, Sutras of Patanjali. So, we're moving on to the yamas, right? In the first limb of yoga is the yamas, right? It's the things that we don't do. It's the restraints. It's to have some sort of restraint and recognize how we're operating, relating to the world, right? And so the first one is the mother of all of them, just as the ignorance was the mother of all kleshas, sort of an umbrella and kind of resulting in the rest of them, right? Ahimsa is the first one, right? Himsa itself, without the not just himsa, means harm or violence. And as you get into more Sanskrit studies, a very simple understanding is that the A in front of it is usually the opposite, the negative, right? So ahimsa means non-harm, okay? So that's how it's generally translated, is non-harm. Now this is open for a lot of debate, and we'll debate some of it here. We'll see how deep and how far you want to go with this, right? Because from my experience, I understand that this is not a black and white concept. The philosophy as a whole, as you get into like an Eastern understanding, is not black and white. And in the West particularly, we have incredibly black and white thinking, right? And it's not that there's not black and white as well, but as I've said before, I believe that the singularity includes the duality, right? So that there is more than just the black and white. It's just not, I'm telling you, when you start to evolve and you start to see things, when you start to open up your mindset and not be set in the old ways, we could hear these things, but what does that really mean? Well, when you work with these principles, it starts to happen. And when you fucking have it for the first time, when you have an epiphany, when you have a realization and you see something about yourself that you never understood, or it's about something else, or you understand now in a deeper way, it's incredibly profound, right? So that's like allowing ourselves to be open. So the practice of ahimsa in a very black and white way, because most of us actually might need to be black and white because it's not black and white to say that it's not black and white. Ugh. All right. So some of us do need the black and white of just like, hey, don't be a fucking dick. Stop hurting other people. You don't actually recognize. See, that's the issue, is that we don't actually recognize how much harm we are actually doing, right, to other people. We don't recognize that the world is just a whole shitload of 8 billion people, these 8 billion wounded beings walking around with all their fucking hurts, and everybody just poking and prodding everybody else, and everybody's reacting. They're reacting out of their own pain. So they're reacting from everybody else poking and prodding their shit, not even recognizing it's their shit, and then they just blame everybody else for poking their shit when they're the ones walking around having not healed all their crap, right? And that's where self-responsibility comes in. That's where true spirituality comes in, to stop blaming the fucking world and step out of a victim role and move into a place of empowerment within yourself, within spirituality, in a space of humility, right? So we're all just sitting around poking and prodding other people and being reactors out of our own pain. And we don't actually recognize how much harm we're doing to other people, right? And we don't actually recognize the other part of ahimsa that some people may or may not agree with, is how much harm we are doing to ourselves, right? When we actually learn to take care of ourselves, and this is a very practical modern understanding of ahimsa, is like self-care. When we start to do that healing work within ourselves and start to learn to heal ourselves on deeper levels, right? And we stop acting or reacting out of our own pain. When we start acting from a place of love and self-love, then we move from being a reactor into an actor in this world. And it's a profound shift in operating in this world, right? When we stop reacting and move into acting. And that can come from ahimsa for ourselves, self-care, because I venture to say that we really are not aware of how much harm we're doing to ourselves. We're not even aware of the self-talk that is happening, this programming that is constantly going underneath everything, right? This shaming, critical inner parent or this critical inner voice that is constantly telling us we're not enough. It's bullshit. It's lies. It's crap. And it seems so logical and reasonable to you because you've heard it your whole life, or from your perspective you can see. Now again, it's not black and white. So if you go try to climb K2, as was my example, and you have no idea how to climb a mountain, you're gonna fucking die. So it's discernment. That's why with Ahimsa, it's a discernment as well, because also it comes down to really what we define as harm. Like, what is harm? A lot of things that I thought would have been harmful to me were actually exactly what I needed. And what I was actually doing to myself was quite fucking harmful. I mean, the grossest example, but I hesitate to use it because it's so obvious to a lot of people that they're not obvious. It's not obvious where they're still harming themselves. But with like drugs and alcohol or something like that, right? That's like, yeah, this is great. This is a good time. No, I'm not harming anybody or harming myself. And it's like, it's nonsense. It's fucking absolute bullshit, right? So, but that's a gross, obvious example to a lot of people. Some people it's not that obvious, but to some of us it might be like, okay, yeah, well, I get that. I don't do that anymore. But you don't actually recognize where you really are harming yourself, right? So, this definition of harm, there's the cruel to be kind. There is tough love. There is an understanding that, the world, accepting the world as it is a difficult thing, and that God's love, or whatever you want to call it, this breath that is constantly there, is there this loving, caring God? Is there this loving, caring space? If you choose to believe so, then it's going to help you. So if you choose to start to operate out of compassion and love and care for yourself and for other people instead of acting out of your own pain and suffering, see, this is where it gets not black and white too, because it's not about, we have to have healthy boundaries, understanding healthy boundaries. Now, some people would just teach, I don't believe that Ahimsa is pacifism, or pacifism is extreme pacifism and just allowing yourself to be beaten and abused. That's not what this is about. This is not about, I do believe in self-defense. I do believe that, if you're coming in and you're going to rape and kill my family, I'm going to do my damnedest, right? And I could do it without the learning the true way of understanding how to act without that hatred or anger or rage, so you're not coming out of that space, and to do the least amount of harm is really the best translation for it. Instead of non-harm, it's the least amount of harm. So in any particular situation, how can you do the least amount of harm to the most people involved, including yourself, right? And at that rate, all we can do is the best we can do from that moment where we're at, from that understanding in that time in our lives. But as we start to bring these principles into our lives, we start to unfold into deeper levels of understanding. Because there's people that practice Ahimsa. I mean, I do as a vegan, that is part of my practice, right? But I'll be damned. I know that if me and you are out in the fucking Himalayas, and one of us you freeze to death, you're damn right I'm gonna fucking cut a chunk of your ass off, and I'm gonna fry it up on that fucking fire, and I'm gonna eat the hell out of it, and I'm gonna fucking love every second of your ass, right? So it's discernment in every single moment, right, of what is the least amount of harm. I mean, that's where the Bhagavad Gita comes in. For Arjuna, the least amount of harm is to fight that battle, is to fight this dharmic war, is to actually kill. The least amount of harm is to kill. This is where you get into ethical relativism, right? And understanding what, is it, that it's outside of good and bad, right and wrong. Is it okay to, shoot down the plane with 200 people in it if it's going to save 5,000? If it's crashing into a building with 5,000, like, is this? It's the least amount of harm possible. And also, it's like I said, the best we can do from that point, from our understanding, right? Because we really don't know, and all we're doing all day long is judging other people for how they're operating. And the whole idea is to be taking a look at ourselves, right, and not acting out of that wounded, desperate place within ourselves. So the work is to really have Ahimsa and self-care and a practice to take care and love ourselves, so that we are not operating out of that space. To operate from a space beyond all of our wounds, beyond all of our opinions and our pain. Doesn't mean it's not there, doesn't mean it's not valid, right? Again, then this is where boundaries, and I'm going to do one on boundaries when we're done with the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, but it's very easy to get into this space with all this spiritual work. When you look at ego and you say, like, give, 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 some of us give so fucking much that we're not saving enough for ourselves. And that's a problem. That's not spirituality. That's not service. There's an issue in there. There's an issue of why you're actually giving, or to what degree you're giving, and you're not discerning what is actually best for the most amount of people involved, right? That is what I say, is like, definitely take care of yourself. And it seems like a selfish thing, but really it's the most giving thing you can do. When you heal yourself and you have one more being out in the world doing great things and wonderful things from a space of love and compassion for themselves and then for others, it's beautiful, it's transformative. The rest of the world everyone is just blaming everybody else, right? They're all acting out of their own pain and they have no idea. They have no idea how much harm they're doing. We have no idea how much harm we're doing. And when we actually start to become aware of how much harm we're doing to ourselves and the world, I mean, like the fucking Keurig, right? Is like, again, it's little by little, but when we start to become aware of the practices that we're doing in our lives, how much we're harming the environment, with our own, with our ignorance. Again, it all goes back to all these kleshas and things like that stop us on our path. The ignorance of the fact that all this stuff is harming us. We have no idea how fucking blessed and lucky we are to have running goddamn water in this country. And I'm speaking to anybody that's here in America, in the United States, right? That we have no idea how blessed we are. We take so much for granted. It's unbelievable. And we sit there and we fucking complain about shit all the time. That doesn't mean we can't move to make things better in this country and for ourselves in our lives. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just looking at understanding how much harm we might even be doing and not even be aware of it, right? And then we sit there and complain that we don't have enough. It's ridiculous. God damn it. So, I'm kind of rambling, but real fucking simple is don't be a dick. Really? Just stop being a fucking shitbag, right? That's Ahimsa, is operating out of kindness and compassion and do the least amount of harm in any particular situation. My boy JC, at one point he said, Moses told you this, but I tell you this. I feel like since I'm in this Moses phase, I'm going to go back and I'm going to fucking one up my boy JC. So JC, he said, do unto others as you would have done unto you. And I say, do unto you, for some of you, that you would do the way that you would, do unto, I just fucked it up. I had this profound, amazing, beautiful thing to give you and I just screwed it up. So do unto yourself as you would do unto others. For some of you, right? Some of you need to learn to actually take care of yourself. You're just giving, and then it's just codependence. That's all it is. You're just giving, you don't even realize that you're fucking depleting yourself, and you don't know how to set healthy boundaries and stuff like that and take care of yourself, and then be able to help other people take care of themselves. We're a fucking codependent nation as fuck. We really are. Everybody just expecting everybody else to behave the way they want them to, and be like, so that they can be okay. It's such nonsense. It's really such nonsense. Doesn't mean that we can't bring awareness to people, right? To help them grow into a space of how we may be feeling or how we may be affected. That's where communication comes in, and nonviolent communication comes in powerfully here with Ahimsa. Is nonviolent, right? Is I feel blank when you blank, so can we blank? Instead of you're fucking doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, and you're just attacking back and keeping this cycle going, right? This samsara, just keep being born again into this fucking pain again and again and again. This cycle of pain happening again and again. Stop it somewhere. You be the one to stop it, right? See, I'm practicing Ahimsa right now by having my sunglasses on because I don't want to fucking kill you with my looks. Oh yeah! Alright, this one's really long and I don't think I really got much shit out there, so I wonder if anybody actually made it to the end. Alright, that's all I've got on Ahimsa. Just basically don't be a dick, right? Be fucking kind. Just be goddamn kind to yourself and to others. Real fucking simple. In Lakesha Lakin, I am you, you are me. Namaste. What? Too much?